Welcome to Making It Happen, a career in the performing arts, where we discuss how to break into the performing arts industry for yourself or your child, teen, or young adult. Guests include professionals who are passionate and share my vision of helping talented individuals land professional representation and have successful careers in the arts. My name is Lisa Csolak, and I am the CEO and founder of Making It Happen, a career in the performing arts, having helped hundreds of clients break into the performing arts business on stage, in films, television, commercial work, and more. This podcast is supplemental to my groundbreaking online courses, Professional Kids and Teens 101, a primer for parents, and Professional Biz 201 for young adults, college students, and graduates. For more information, check out all that you can benefit from my courses, programs, my free newsletter, my free guides. Go to lbctalent.com. My guest today is Kurt Csolak. Hi, Kurt. How are you?
I'm good. How's it going?
Good, good. I'm really glad that we got to make this happen.
Yeah, all the other ones have looked great. I've watched some of the others and happy to, of course, I don't know, talk about whatever I can talk about with everything that's gone on.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So I just want to mention that a lot of our listeners are parents of young children and teens and young adults who are thinking about doing this. They have talent and ability, and they're trying to figure it out. And so we're trying to help them figure it out by sharing our stories and, giving them tips and tricks along the way.
Yeah.
There's also going to be young adults. There's a lot of young adults. In fact, over the last couple of years, the majority of my clients have been young adults who are trying to navigate the industry either during college, after college, and beyond. So I really think that your story is going to really come into play on all fronts. So maybe this needs to be part one of 3 parts that we do with you.
Whatever it needs to be. I mean, hello parents and fellow artists trying to do this crazy thing and make a living from it as much as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start at the beginning. And for everyone who's listening, this is my son, Kurt, and I'm just thrilled with everything he's done. I'm very proud of him, and so I'm excited to talk to him, but I really do think that his story is going to be very advantageous for you to hear. So let's talk about the beginning, like when you started, like give everybody a general idea.
1990. So it's funny because I mean, all of our stories are unique, and how I always introduce myself to people, because it's so central to who I am and what I've kind of become, is I say like, oh, I grew up at my mother's dance studio or my mother's performing arts school. And that for me is just, it kind of encapsulates a lot of why I've ended up where I am, and not for a lack of like no effort and no kind of, I had a choice and I had things that I could do otherwise, and I have done different things. But I think a lot of my childhood was, my earliest memories just being at a performing arts school and hanging out, and everything that was around me was a pursuit of some kind of craft, whether it was some kind of dance discipline or acting or singing. And I didn't really know growing up, the culture around me that I was born into was just kind of getting better at something kind of for the sake of just getting better at it, just to have something to do. And that from an early stage, I think that was ingrained in me of like, that's just something you do, is you have something that you enjoy doing. And I did enjoy doing whatever classes I was in or different things, because it was fun to play. It was fun to be in an acting class and just be imaginative and pretend to be other people or pretend to be in certain situations. And in the same sense, those same situations in a dance routine or learning to be active, or, because I wanted to be in Star Wars. You see things that inspire you. And interestingly enough, the performing arts school that you owned and still own used to be the original studio that I was born into, was attached to like the local movie theater in our town. So I lived basically at a performing arts school and / movie theater, that I was either in class or going to the movies and watching movies all the time. So I think that was just very central to how I was brought up and how different things were, as a kid, you have ambitions and things that make an impression on you. And those things definitely did.
Yeah. So when did you start getting involved in the professional side? Can you go into that maybe in some detail so that people can
Yeah.
kind of get an idea what it felt like for you?
We had a good core group of friends. We're doing community theater shows, and I was doing competition. I was doing musical theater, um, and in acting classes. And I mean, honestly, the first like big audition was that Sky High audition that I feel like that was it was just like the one time that it was an open call and we went, and I feel like we were there for like an hour or so, or maybe 2 hours waiting in line. You go into a room, you read in front of some people, and then I ended up getting a call back, and I think I got like maybe two more callbacks, or at least one more callback. And that was like, oh, maybe this is something that I actually could be doing. And of course it was for like a Disney movie, so it felt really big and really cool. And of course it was something involving superheroes. So for me, at what was I, 14, 15 at the time, I was like, it was just a really cool potential thing to have a little validation from, in the sense of that I got a call back. So that was sort of something that I think motivated me to go, oh, maybe this is something I should actually pursue, because it is something that I've been training for. It's something that I would love to be able to do. And from there, we just kind of started down the path of, okay, is there a manager that we could get, or some kind of agent? And I ended up signing with Shirley Grant. You had prepared me in terms of like what they might ask me or what we might do. So I felt pretty comfortable being like, okay, this is just like the next thing that you kind of do. It didn't feel like a massive deal. It just was like, oh, this is something we'll try, and if it works, great. If not, I don't know, we'll see. And yeah, I ended up signing, auditioned a bunch. Um, and it hasn't necessarily been a linear path in terms of like I signed and then immediately started booking things, but yeah, it just that was sort of the start. And then from there it was auditioning for everything and anything and everything, from commercials to little educational films to uh, some voiceover things. And it was something that I was just kind of open to everything, and continued to train in acting and singing. And we were, for like my most of my high school time living in New Jersey, I feel like was a mix of being in school, going to dance class rehearsals and stuff for the competition team, and then also potentially leaving school early and having to hop on a train or a bus and going into the city for lessons or auditions or things like that. So very grateful for like being surrounded by all of those things to support basically like the same general push of like, okay, I want to be in the performing arts in some capacity, and having the motivation to want to do it personally, having the support from you and dad, and from our friend group that also was going in frequently to the city. So we'd be carpooling, we'd be hopping on the bus, the train, and yeah, just making it work. But like thinking back, like it was a decent amount of like hustle, like to juggle schoolwork and classes and auditions and trying to, just do all of it. But it was exciting. It was fun.
Yeah, I think there's a certain type of person that you have to be able to juggle all of it. And I think that's something that
Yeah.
anybody who's new to it, especially kids who are teenagers and even younger children, and I think parents get really concerned about how do you make all that work? And it kind of
Yeah.
all
I think,
works out. They sometimes
yeah.
worry about it too much ahead of time, I think. They need to kind of
Yeah.
give it a chance.
I mean, the same with kind of anything. Like, I mean, at this point, I started my own business. I started a production company after I went to school for basically for film and film producing. But it's like, I've heard a lot of things like, oh, if you knew how much work it was going to be getting into it, like you would never do it, kind of a thing. But it's
Yeah.
something that you kind of just say yes, and just and you kind of take it baby steps. And um yeah, you take it a day at a time. There's some weeks that we had, four auditions and we were going in and out of the city, and there's some weeks there's stints of weeks that were dry where you have a little break. So it's what's nice about the lifestyle of it from since high school has been it kind of ebbs and flows. And there's times where it's rains and pours and everything falls on itself at once, which can get exciting. And honestly, those times are when I feel like I do my best work, because you're just like firing on all cylinders. And there's the time of release and break, and there's like a what systole, distole, like kind of yeah movement
Yeah.
with the kind of work that you end up getting and the energy it costs. But
Hmm.
but yeah, no, it definitely it takes a lot of time and effort and money, and it's something that you know you just have to prioritize what's most important. Like there was a lot of times that in high school or in college that there were opportunities to have an audition or go to a thing, but I chose to go to a friend's house, or there was a friend's party that I couldn't do because I chose to go to the audition. So you just kind of have to, pick and choose your battles, know what you what's most important to you. And it's a lot of that that what's it's like the marshmallow game. It's like with kids. It's like you can either have one marshmallow now or when in an hour you can have two. And it's constantly, you know, figuring out for yourself, okay, how badly do you want the two marshmallows instead of the comfort thing that's immediate. So yeah.
Can you just talk about when you were in high school and the job that you booked? I think there are a lot of people that don't really understand the voiceover world, and I think
Yeah.
it'd be interesting for you to
So
mention that. Can you also tie in your journey and choices when it came to the collegiate side, the university experience?
so in the midst of auditioning for musicals and commercials and all kinds of things, which I was very grateful to have the opportunity to have a manager that was just sending me for everything. And that was also on us too, to just be like, whatever you think I'd potentially book, like send me out. Cause I think it's a great way to start because you don't know where you're going to settle. Like if I was very strict with, I just want to do film, TV and nothing else, I wouldn't have booked a lot of things that I actually really did enjoy. So I was in high school, I think I was 16 when I first auditioned, maybe 17. So I was going in for auditions. There was a random voiceover call where we went to a recording studio for the casting, and it was I forget what for, but it was for I think some cartoon, and um I don't know. I think a lot of the times like you can't necessarily judge immediately like whether or not you're the right type for it. I think I was probably fine for it. But after the audition, we were waiting there for a little bit, and the producer, the casting person that was there, that was just recording people and directing a little bit, um, they were like, "We actually have this other project." He was like, "Can you hang around for a little bit?" And so a producer's going to come, and we might want to have you read for this other thing that we're producing. And I was like, "Okay, sure." I didn't know what it was, and it happened to be basically a new Speed Racer cartoon that was going to be produced for Nicktoons. And yeah, I auditioned for that. And that felt kind of cool. I was like, oh, cool. Like they thought of me for something else at the audition, and we got to hang out and didn't really think too much of it.
Yeah, you know
Uh,
what? Let me interject something here. So, as a parent
yeah,
at
you
this
were you
point,
were there, right?
I was with you, yeah.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting and what I would like to people to understand is in that moment it had started to snow and we
Oh,
were
okay.
in New York City and we had already waited for some time before you went into that initial audition.
Yeah, I remember we were
And
there
when
for like felt like an hour and a half, 2 hours or something.
yes, and then they came out and asked if you could stay and we waited like another hour and then they came out again and said we're really sorry but do you think you could stay and we waited for like another 45 minutes and we didn't know what it was because they weren't really supposed to be talking about it in that moment and we really weren't given much information and I kept watching the snow come down and I was a little concerned about getting home but I knew this could be an amazing opportunity, so I said we're staying. In my mind we are waiting, they like him for something, they would
Yeah.
never take the time to do this if they didn't like him. So I think as a parent you have to be able to always kind of assess not only how you feel in the moment but what opportunities could lie there and trust people. They wouldn't have asked us to stay, especially
Yeah.
with the weather conditions, if they didn't really want you or weren't really interested in you. So
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think thank you for staying and letting and not being like, no, we're leaving.
well, that's what I think a lot of parents would do. They'd be like,
Sure.
it's
Yeah.
snowing, we have to get home, your brother and sister are doing ABCD or
Yeah. I
whatever the
mean,
situation is. You have to kind of be open to a lot of opportunities and keep
yeah.
your mind in that positive headspace all the time.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, so that happened. We auditioned, and then feel like a month went by, and then we got the general casting call for that same project. And I was like, when I got that, I was like, you know what? Didn't happen. Like I must have just been like, oh, they thought I was like maybe a fit, but like whatever. And then I went in with our core kind of group of friends that were my age that also auditioned for the project. So now we knew it was a Speed Racer cartoon. We got there, it was like an open call, similar kind of situation where you come in and there were pictures of the characters that they were casting on the wall, like the cartoons, and you basically pick the script for what character you think you could play the most, or fit the most, and then you go in one at a time and read that script and then leave. And I remember being there and being like, oh, this is the same thing I did. And I went into the room, and like I think even the person that I was reading with, I might have mentioned like, oh, like I did this like a month ago, and like I don't think that person knew or remembered, like if it was remembered me. So I was like, ah, shit, it's definitely not my, it's not going to be me. It's because, or maybe it wasn't as impressive on them that I could be the fit, or they were just doing their due diligence and just seeing what else they had. But I auditioned for it again, and then it wasn't. I feel like it was like another month or two went by, and didn't hear anything. Forgot about it in a general sense, because a lot of times every time you audition, you don't know if you're going to hear anything, and the best mental way forward is to just go, okay, I did that thing and I felt good about it, or I didn't feel good about it. Like, what's the next thing? And then you just focus on the next
Absolutely.
opportunity that's
Yeah.
coming. And then yeah, no, I don't think I heard anything about it until it was funny that you did that. But I was at like lunch at high school, and like all of a sudden you were standing there and you were like, oh, you booked Speed Racer, and that was like, it was kind of cool, because that was, and of course at the time, like that was the biggest thing that I had booked. It was something that was gonna, we didn't know the size or scale of what it was gonna be, and I ended up doing it for 2 seasons, and it ran on Nicktoons, and like it was a cool little like cartoon, and I was grateful to be a part of it. But of course, yeah, of course, at that time it was like the coolest thing, and like of course he's like Speed Racer, and it was right when I got my license to drive, when I was my provisionary license to drive when I was 17. So I just like felt super cool, like being able to drive and now having this voiceover where I was like a race car driver, dude. So it was cool. I really enjoyed getting to do that, and I think that also cemented getting that job, because it ended up being the way we would record is it would kind of be a weekly thing. Like I'd come in one day out of the week and record one episode for like maybe 2 hours in the booth, and then would go back the following week. So I was in high school, going to school, doing all my work, and then one day out of the week I would have to either leave early or leave immediately from school, get on the train, get pizza at Penn Station, walk down to, what was it, Creative Bubble on like, I don't know if it's still there, but it was like by Union Square, record, and then basically come back. And that was like, I guess senior year of high school, junior year of high school into like freshman year of college. Um, but yeah, so that was a cool way to kind of start the career in a sense, and at least be in the city and feel like I was a part of things and doing something, and I think that was a big reason too why when I was applying to school and figuring out what I wanted to do for college and where I wanted to go, being near New York was a big factor. So I applied to a bunch of schools, Fordham being one, NYU being one. Where else did I?
I
I think where
remember.
else I applied around the area. But Fordham and NYU, I think, were like the two that I was hoping to get, just to be near New York as much as possible. Got accepted to New York, and we had a decent scholarship, and yeah, decided to come to New York. And the program that I did was the Gallatin School at NYU, which you create your own curriculum. And I didn't know exactly what I wanted to study. I it was I had a portion of me that wanted to do some kind of acting program and do something on with the performing arts, but there was another side of me that I've already been taking acting classes and in performing arts my whole life, in terms of the different classes I was taking. I think at the time I was even actively in classes in New York anyway. So trying to capitalize off of the kind of education and resources that you have and need to go to school. I wasn't I don't know. I wasn't sure what I really wanted to do or what would be the most beneficial. So the first year, I was kind of floating in terms of what my um, major or concentration was, and I went to Gallatin, which was in the school of like individualized study. So you basically create your own curriculum and make up your major, and you can pick basically classes from any of the schools within NYU. So like the business school, Tisch, the like performing arts school, um, Steinhardt, which was like the education and music school. So like what was cool is I each semester was able to select what classes were interesting to me that I wanted to create. And of course, you have an advisor that's trying to help you like solidify it all into something that makes sense, that's useful, and not just a random smattering of classes. Um, but so that was like, I had a good amount of anxiety with it in terms of making it something worth an NYU tuition. Um, but also was freeing that I wasn't tied down to something for all of college. And I ended up basically taking a couple classes in the film program and really liking everything that was there, and basically created a curriculum around film producing. And it was a mix of like business and creative classes. There was some like performing arts classes in there. Like I did take like a musical theater acting class that was within the Gallatin School. Um, some creative writing, some psychology. I did a physics minor because I like science. Like I just did a mix of things, but it was overall a good experience, and I'm glad I did it. And it definitely allowed me to create the the mix of work that I've had now, and at least given me like a good basis for yeah, everything that I wanted to do and am on the way to still be doing.
It's been a really interesting journey. And I think
Yeah.
what people can learn from this too is everyone's journey is different, and yours definitely is and was. And I think that some people think it has to be a certain way. So I think they think that their children have to get into a musical theater program or an acting program or an acting for film and TV in a college or university, and that's the step that you take, and then you get into the professional business if you can find an agent or a manager. Like, they don't understand that there's other ways to do it, which is another reason I'm doing the podcast, so that people can learn that there are so many different ways to work professionally in the industry.
A prerequisite to have finding success isn't, there's no definite thing that you need to do. You don't have to do a full acting program or a full musical theater program, but you also have to know yourself. Like the reason I didn't do those things is because I felt like I had some kind of foundation outside of that. But also, if I did do one of those programs, I don't know, I maybe could have gotten to where I am now quicker in a certain sense, because I'd have that much more pressure on it. So you kind of have to, in general, with like any pursuit in your life, like it's not going to be linear, and you have to be okay with kind of the choices you make, going with the flow, and having that constant pressure on going towards what you want, but not any judgment as to how it's working out, or how it's meeting your expectations as you go, because it different things happen, different doors close and open, and yeah, it ends up happening in a different way sometimes.
So after your university experience, and after trying to juggle all the lessons and all of the classes and the things that you were doing on the side to kind of stay in the artistic side of things, how important was the networking that you were able to do after college
Yeah.
to end up where you are today with both? And maybe you can talk a little bit about both your film production company and your opportunities there,
Yeah.
as well as where you are now, which is, you can say where you are now.
Yeah. So I think the entire time with any industry, there's I think a lot of it's a mix of the degree of your skill and what you're doing, but also, of course, networking. You're always meeting people. Like anything in the performing arts, you end up becoming close with the with friends that you see at classes or at different things, and depending on what style you like to hang out in or what choreographers you like to take from, you end up, if you frequent those things and notice, and they notice you, and like they notice that you're proficient at that thing, or that you end up in that group, then there's always, there's times that I was taking tap classes, and afterwards, once I was of course of age, you'd be invited out to like grab a drink after the class, or people are hanging out for a little bit longer and going to get food down the street. So it's those kind of things, um, are like pretty vital and important to be able to just be in the community and network, because so much of it is with anything who but it's more so like who knows you, who knows that what you're trying to do. And with multiple things in my life, you don't necessarily get the opportunities until you make it known, or you put forward that energy. Like I've uh, different things, like I've had been performing, auditioning. After school, I ended up doing a lot of film work, and that snowballed into a production company that now I'll do music videos and corporate things and commercials and short films, and there are a lot of really cool things like that, and happily able to help create and bring to life different visions for different people that I respect and admire a lot. Recently, I've gotten to work with Ayodele Cassell and Anthony Morgerato with films that I basically did the creative or the technical side for them in terms of filming and editing. One was Chasing Magic with Ayodele that we did for The Joyce during the pandemic. With Anthony, we've done 2 short films now, one that we just released this past December, and then one that we're just finishing up now editing that we're going to submit to festivals. We've also gotten to work with Jared Grimes on film work, and that was very grateful to do that. But I also, in terms of wanting to also tap dance with them and also be on the performance side with them, I remember, I think it was during 2020 or 2020, early 2021, that I had been doing some of the film work with them, but I let them know, I was like, I'd love to actually perform with you guys. Like if this was ever like a swing opportunity or something where I could just come in and be in the room. And it really wasn't until I kind of made that known that they're like, oh yes, of course. And then kind of got into the mix with that. So I think there's a lot of, it's networking. It's letting people know what your dreams are and what you want. And yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you mentioned that, because it is so important. I just got off the phone with a client the other day, explaining to them, and I think I do this more and more with young adults than anyone else: blow your own horn. Like you need to be able to, you need to have that elevator speech. Not that you actually want it, obviously you don't want to do it in an elevator, but just that concept of the elevator speech. And you want to be able to let people know what you want and exactly what you said, what your dreams are. Not that you're going to say it in that way.
That too.
Mm-hmm. But they don't know.
Yeah, people don't know, and they'll like if you like put out that, I want to be performing, like in 5 years I'd love to perform with a symphony orchestra, or I want to be like the with how technology and social media and everything works these days, and just the network of people that you come to know, like that's how things kind of happen, is like. And I think there's a lot of people that want to help other people fulfill their dreams, or want or get to where they want to be. And I think you have to not only know what you want, but also at least have get to the place where you believe it can happen. Because at the same time, like you have to convince people that you can do it, and if you have to like know for yourself that you can. But that's like of course a big thing.
Yeah, and I think too, another part of it is being able to keep your ears and eyes open when you're in various situations, so that you can know when you can interject those ideas in an appropriate way. Like I almost feel like, and I would love to teach a class on how to do that. How do you actually, and when do you actually open your mouth or reach out and say, hey, do you want to go get coffee? I'd love to talk to you about something. And or whatever it is that you would do, or in whatever situation, like you said, you were invited out for a drink and you get to go with people and sit around and talk, and to be able to start to interject some of those options. Because how do they know that here you are, this amazing filmmaker who's filming all kinds of dance programs and trying to do everything you can to promote dance, especially tap dance. They might be perceiving you as that person who is artistic in that way, even though they know you're a tap dancer, not knowing that you have the skill and want that option and want that opportunity. And until you say it, and until you reach out and try to make that happen. And I think a lot of people don't understand that they need to make those things happen.
Yeah.
You can't just sit back,
Yeah, and that's something too. Like there's a mix, in terms of the culture of performing arts and auditions and all those kinds of things. It's a mix of, seeking that external validation of like someone else bring me onto your project and show and tell me that I'm good. And then also knowing what you like and do on your own, and also enjoying it for the thing itself, in terms of like, I just enjoy to act, or I just enjoy to tap dance, and doing things that you think are cool and that you like, that you'd want to do. So it's like, it's kind of a twofold thing of, of course, a good portion of the industry is going to be, you have to go out and prove your skill and network and be heard and be seen and get yourself in the right places, and be not like be proactive about that, and sometimes aggressive, but more proactive and as confident and grounded as possible. And like, this is what I offer, this is who I am, this is what I can do for you. Because as much as the classic, cultural tale of like, I want to be a star, and like some producer's going to come and pick you out of, some random thing and go, you have the it factor, kid, and you're going to be in this big show. Like, as much as we want to believe that happens, it's a lot more, it's still producers who spend, years producing a project, wanting to bring it to life. And then when it comes to time to cast it, they're looking for the best person to fit that role, to make the money, to make the thing successful. So like, you're still just a cog in the machine of a project, and to put a lot of your own value and stock into, I want to be like, chosen for that thing. Of course, that feels good when you book a part and you become a part of a project, and it's a great community feel to all be creating something together. Like, that's always fun to do. But I think with that, I think it's really healthy for any artist to also have things that they work on themselves, that they are self-producing, or that they do with friends, and go, hey, like, we don't need, especially nowadays when we can film an entire film on our phones, and edit it on our phones too. Like, I think there's a lot of proactiveness that we can all have, myself included, with just writing our own scenes, right? Like filming our own stuff, getting our own things out there. And of course, there's not necessarily an immediate monetary return from that, in terms of, it's not necessarily a job, but it's something that'll get you, self-validated, and you can then go into the auditions and feel like, you don't necessarily need the thing, because you can do it, and it'll just give you that much more confidence going into other things, and just with just the enjoyment of your craft as well.
Sure. So continue a little bit of what you were just saying about the validation of being a performer, and also the community that you're in when you get involved at that level, and maybe tie that into your recent journey to Broadway.
So in terms of like Broadway, and I think a lot of people from a young age see that as like the pinnacle of like, I want to be on Broadway. And I think there is authenticity and truth to like it being something that is it feels like a cool club to be a part of. It's like the most popular thing that anyone who isn't a performer, if they hear you're a performer, they go, "Oh, are you on Broadway?" It's just like the thing that, for whatever reason, is the qualifier. And in a way, it's unfortunate because honestly, like I've had a great experience, but I think I've had more fulfilling experiences with other things that I've done, both regional theater or personal projects that have just been more fulfilling and more exciting. Of course, this is like the big, like being in Funny Girl has been the biggest public thing that I've done and, you know, had found success with. But Broadway was never something that I necessarily thought was going to happen or expected to happen. Of course, like even with growing up at a performing arts school and it being always, it was like the unspoken thing that you're all trying to get, like eventually, like why are you training in all these things, is to not just get good at disciplines, but like there's the unspoken, like at some point you're gonna have to audition and like maybe you'll be in a Broadway show one day or you'll be in a film one day. So I think that you know that it's good to have those goals, but at the same time, knowing what I knew from going to school and the producing side of things, and knowing what the volatility of not just casting, but just how the shows get made and how 9 out of 10 Broadway shows don't break even and how so many shows close after a couple weeks. Like if you put all your stock into, I want to be in a Broadway show and a lead, you could get to the point where you finally are cast in the lead of a Broadway show, and it could open for a week and it could close from no fault of your own. And so I think it's defining success and what's most important to you and what's most valuable, I think is important and healthy to do in whatever part of the journey you're at. And yeah, getting to the point where you're like with Funny Girl and specifically, for a while I was auditioning and you know, different roles and different tracks from different shows have different things that they ask of each performer. Book of Mormon, you have to be able to tap, you have to be able to sing to a certain note, you have to be able to have the comedic chops, X, Y, and Z. Newsies, I remember going in for Newsies, and I was a little bit younger. I was maybe in like my early 20s or like 19, 18. And I didn't have the like gymnastic athletic ability to be able to do like those extra things that the newsy guys have to do. So like you kind of have to know yourself and know what your ability is at the time and be unapologetic and realistic with yourself with what you expect. Like I could have left the Newsies audition being really upset, being like, oh, like I'm not good enough. But I also knew that I wasn't going to probably book it because I can't do a back handspring or whatever they asked me to do. So with Funny Girl, it was the first time that things just kind of lined up. And that, I think you have to be able to have the patience and the longevity with, if you're really trying to book either Broadway or something that specifically you're really trying to go like, this is what I want to do. Because so much of it's the right show, the right time. Like Funny Girl could have come 5 years earlier and I might have not been available or not been to the point where I am with my voice, or it could have come 5 years later and I would have been too old. So a lot of things have to line up, and it just so happened that I knew the choreographer, Idella Cassell. She was choreographing the tap, and I had just done the filming Chasing Magic with her, and at the time was actively in rehearsals with her for doing that same show in Boston. That was something that of course is helpful, and you have to kind of use the cards that you're dealt and you know, play your best hand. So when I saw that Funny Girl was happening, I didn't actually know the show. I didn't know, I knew it was tied to Barbra Streisand. I hadn't watched the movie, but I knew she was choreographing it. I knew it was sort of like a classic Broadway musical.
Yeah.
So as soon as I saw that, told the agent, told IO, and then I also submitted a self-tape, which was like a dance combo and like a song. And then after that, got called in. I wasn't sure from what, if it was like IO recommending me and putting me in her pool,
yeah, there's no
or if
way
it
of
was
knowing.
from the general call, or if it was from my agent getting me in, but whatever reason I got in the room. And then it just so happened that like everything they asked of, you know, what the audition was, like there were things that I was comfortable in. Like the jazz was just enough like athletic. It asked just, you know, the amount of athleticism and technique and ability that I felt comfortable doing. It wasn't like a switch center and four turns into like a ballet, you know, cross the floor thing. It was just the amount of like rite of style and technique and yeah, things that I could kind of handle. The tap I could do. The singing wasn't asking me to sing, you know, belt an A or a B flat. It was within my range, and the scene was something that I felt comfortable doing with the Nick Arnstein stuff. So it just so happened that those things lined up, and yeah, I ended up going. We had the open call, or the invited call, which was jazz combo tap, singing, and then after that I got called back and I had to do this a scene, a song of my own, one of the Nick songs, and then they gave me another scene, but we didn't end up doing that. And then they sang me. We did scales like up and down so that they could see my range. And then I came back and I had to do the dance again, tap again, which was a different combo. And then there was like 30 people in the room, and it was the same thing, like sing my original song that wasn't in the show, sing the song from the show, do the scene, and I think that's all I did in the last call. So it was like that happened, and you know, it generally felt good. And of course, we were in rehearsals with Ayadeli, so like I saw her the next day, and we were like, "Don't tell us, but like good vibes." And she was like, "Yeah." So we were like, "Okay." So we weren't sure until, you know, I didn't know until I officially got the call. But it was a unique experience to kind of have somewhat of like knowledge from what the creative team wanted and was dealing with. And it was actually nice to hear the choreographer Eleanor Scott. We went out after one of the shows, and it was nice. But she said, she was like, "Oh, like because I struggle with, you know, in terms of how much I've been involved with performing and being in and out. You know, you don't feel as secure as if I was actively more in dance classes for the last 10 years." So in terms of the other styles of dance, like I didn't want, of course, just to be cast in the show because Io put me in there, and she convinced the rest of the team that I should be in there just because
Right.
I'm her friend, or I you know, I filmed something for her. But Eleanor, the other choreographer, she was like, "Oh, like I did the jazz combo, and she didn't know I was in Io's camp in terms of like her top picks." And Eleanor was like, "I immediately wanted you as like one of my top picks." So it was cool to hear that, and that was like nice to hear. You know, this one in particular happened to be not just it being the right part, the right time. My preparedness was enough for what was being asked of me, and I had, you know, somewhat of a networked in with the creative team. So like, you know, at least for me, it took all those things to line up to finally book a Broadway show.
So, Kurt, all this information is wonderful for everyone who's listening. It's definitely extremely helpful because my whole philosophy is learn from these other person's journeys and their perceptions and their understandings,
Yeah.
and try to, you know, put your best foot forward and move into the space that you need to move into to, you know, to get where you want to go, whether that's the networking piece, the training piece, you know, all of that. So knowing what you know and everything that you've been through, can you kind of give the adult listener your kind of perception of their general perception
Okay, yeah.
going into this process? Because I think what I'm finding is I have a lot of clients who they don't really understand the barometer of, or the level of proficiency that they need to be at. And you kind of touched on
Sure.
that as you
Yeah.
went through all of this,
So I
but
think,
that's difficult, right? So how do they, if there's somebody who just got out of college, they're trying to find an agent or a manager, they're in the city, maybe they're planning to move to the city, and what next?
yeah.
Advice from Kurt Solak.
Oh man. Okay. So I think it's a mix of things. I think it's knowing, first of all, it's being realistic with yourself. And if you're not in a place with your own security and your own objectivity about your skills and where you are, if you're not in a place to realistically know yourself well, I think it's good to try to find someone that you respect or is respectable in the industry to give you some perspective. And I think that's a really hard thing to do because a lot of people, especially your family and friends around you, will all tell you you're great at everything. But
Yeah.
I think a healthy way to, and what's really hard when you are in a creative industry where you have some kind of art that you're creating, if you were a potter, if you were a trumpet player, if you were doing something else, you'd have an external instrument that was the thing that, like, when I'm playing, I can critique myself. But when, of course, you are the instrument as an actor or a dancer or a singer, a lot of that critique can feel like attacks on you. So I think healthily trying to detach yourself from who you are when you are performing and who you are in the room when it's the audition or who you are when you're on stage, I think is something that everyone has to do, and you have to be able to be okay with the criticisms and with what you need, because we're all growing. No one's perfect. No one is born with the talent, and I think that's something that I think needs to be dismantled in the sense of, like,
Yes.
you're just born with talent, or you have it or you don't. I've personally never thought that I had any kind of like innate, even with tap dancing, I feel like it was something that I didn't necessarily just immediately have, or it wasn't like I picked it up that much quicker than really anyone else. It was just I liked it and I practiced it, and I still think I have a lot of things to practice. Like for myself, I uh, always think that there's things I can work on, and I think it's healthy to have like a beginner's mind all the time. Like you can always
Yeah.
learn something from anyone. Even I have a tap student that's just learning tap for the first time. I could potentially learn something from them that I haven't learned in the last 25,
Yeah.
20 years
Totally.
of doing something. So anyway, with that, I think first step is to know where you are and know where you need to go. So if you're trying to be on Broadway, or if you're trying to be in a movie, there's certain things that are going to be asked of you. For Broadway, if you're ensemble track, generally you have to be an amazing dancer, an amazing singer, an amazing actor or actress.
Yeah.
And it's one of the hardest jobs in the world. So I think
Yes, it
knowing
is.
that, I always saw Broadway as, and part of the reason why I never like assumed that or expected that Broadway would happen is because I saw Broadway as like, okay, that's the Olympics. That's like, you have to be an Olympic athlete to do 8 shows a week. And those people are, they're doing 8 shows. They're also working out every day. They're also taking class in their off time. Like they're like, and I'm in the show, and I know people who do all those things, and it's crazy. So you have to have the physical ability. You have to know what that demands are on your body and how to maintain and be able to do those things, whether that's working out or knowing your anatomy enough to work out the muscles you need to be able to do the jumps and the leaps and the things you need to do. You have to have the technique to do those things. You have to be able to act and perform through the dancing and the singing and tell the story. At the end of the day, we're all storytellers. So having a sense of not just the acting side, but having a sense of like, okay, the general story. What did the writer like? What's the choreographer trying to say with this piece? Even if you're not saying anything, what's the like? And always having that as a foundation for what you're doing. And then of course singing, having the technique to have the diction and use your voice and breathing and all those things. So there's, for Broadway specifically, a lot of skills are asked of you, and being realistic with where you are against what specifically will be needed of you or wanted to be seen of you in the room, you have to be able to be, to understand what the difference is and what you need to get there. And sometimes if you can't do that yourself, you need someone who can kind of not necessarily be tough love, but be honest with you about what you need to get there. And I think that's a really hard pill to swallow that I think a lot of people don't want to. And I think it limits a lot of people in their careers because
Absolutely.
they can close up, and it's a big insecurity thing, and it's something that is natural. I think, like, it's uncomfortable. This industry sucks a lot of times, and it's uncomfortable to put yourself out there and be in a vulnerable place of, because growing at all, it's you feel like Bambi legs, like anytime if you've never sung in an audition room, it's gonna suck for the first like 10 times, it's and it's a lot about putting yourself into spaces of where you're going to fail, and that being a prerequisite to succeeding is that you have to be uncomfortable and put yourself in the dance class that you think you're the worst at 10 times before you feel like you're actually then growing into it and feeling more comfortable with it. So if you're a dancer that needs more ballet technique, take more ballet classes, and it's going to be uncomfortable for the first 10 times. If you're someone that wants to be in a musical theater show that has tap dance, but you don't necessarily like tap, go don't jump into the hardest class and discourage yourself. Like, it has to be just outside your comfort zone enough that you're pushing yourself, but not enough to like break you mentally. Because that can happen too. If I went into the hardest ballet class, I'd be like, screw this, I am not a dancer, I suck, and I'm gonna go home. So I think if you jump to, if you're at the bottom of the mountain looking at the top and you expect to get to the top immediately, you're never going to get there, and you're going to mentally really discourage yourself at the juxtaposition of like, well, the people at the top, like the guy right next to me just ran to the top, and but that's a Sherpa. He's been doing it since he was like born. So it's like, I think it's being realistic with where you are, what you need, and being unapologetic with what you need. For a long time, I grew up performing competition dance, and as a tap dancer, a lot of the culture is based in improvisation, especially as you get to more advanced levels. A lot of it is your own expression and your own your own voice with what you're doing. And for a long time, improvisation was very uncomfortable for me because I just hadn't done it. And it still is something that, mentally is something that I'll always be trying to find more freedom and more expression with what I want to say and what I want to do in any kind of improv situation. But I avoided a lot of jams and a lot of classes earlier on when I first started encountering it, because I was like, ooh, that's not me. Or I limited myself to being, expecting myself to be further along, comparing myself to kids or other adults who had been doing it since they were 10 years old. So I think that same analogy with anything, if you're someone who didn't grow up performing in competition dances, but you need to be a dancer on Broadway, or you want to be doing dance, or if you didn't grow up singing as much and you're a great dancer, but you're insecure about your singing, like, be okay with that. No, like, and you'll feel so much better as soon as you go, yeah, I'm not, like, it's not definitive. Like, there's things in your control and there's things that aren't in your control. But that's the other side of things that you have to be realistic about, is like, you can control what you do, your choices right now, and that's about it. Even the stuff you did yesterday, you can't control. So like, as much as you can sulk about what you didn't do for the last 10 years to get yourself in a better place, the best time to plant a tree is yesterday. The next best time is today. So start just doing what you need to do, being okay with where you are. And as soon as you can honestly just be like, yeah, I'm not a great like, for me, I'm not as great of an improviser as I want to be, but I can get better. And I'm going to go into class and be okay with fumbling around and not being great, and just picking up, even if I can move the needle a millimeter each class I take, that's all I can hope for and all I can be excited about. So across the board with anything that you're doing, I think if you just graduated, or if you're trying to get into the performing arts, like, know where you are on the talent side, or what skills you need. Um, know your type, know your, and again, with that, things you can control, things you can't control. We're in a visual, industry, whether it's performing like on stage or in film, TV, and we're dealing with how people perceive us, what we can play, how we come off. So be okay with wherever you are, whether that's whatever age you are, whatever kind of type you are, be okay with it. And if you're not, if it's something you can change, then take steps to change it. But if it's not something you can change, you have to, there's a limit to how much you can really push and pull what you are. So it's a mix of, yeah, know what you can control, the things that you can change, take the steps to actively do it unapologetically. The things you can't control, be okay with it, and make friends with who you are, and and yeah, and then in terms of the actual industry side of it, like, once you know where you are and where you want to go, and you're taking steps to do those things, just set the goals and then backtrack what steps you need to take to get there. So if it's an agent, or if it's a show, like, if you want to book a show, you need to get in the room, you need to do the things that are being asked of you. How do you get in the room? Oh, I need an agent, or I need to know that the auditions are there. All right, how do you get an agent? How do you know the auditions are there? Like, we're like, just kind of, backtrack all the little minor baby steps to get there, and then make the plan and just start. Yeah.
I know you do a lot of self-educating. What book are you reading, or books are you reading now? And what book or books can you suggest
Sure.
to adults in the same process that you've been in and are in?
So I want to create a more extensive list, because this is something that recently I've been a little bit more on top of and pushing myself to do, because I've had a lot of time on the subway, and I've just made it a thing to, like, anytime I get on the subway, start reading. And between the 35-40 minutes to the theater and back, I'll read about like 40 pages a day. So I've been getting through a good amount of books recently. But yeah, it's a mix of some acting books, some like just like art and how to approach life kind of books. Recently, I just finished Sanford Meisner's acting book, because there's a lot of things that not going through like a drama curriculum, I didn't necessarily read the standard Stanislavski, Meisner, like those, kind of core acting books that a lot of my peers have read if they've gone through those kind of things. And a lot of it, as I'm reading it, has been reminders and just confirming things that we kind of learn along the way, with like audition technique and also acting technique, and given circumstances, and just at the end of the day, creating, living and doing what you need to create a reality in whatever scene or situation that you're in, acting wise.
Sure.
So there's different acting books I'd recommend. There's The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle is good. Kind of just talks about how to practice and how to gain skill in something, which is just repetition of whatever the thing is, but it's in deep practice, so that you're not just repeating things that are wrong or getting into bad habits, but it's just a good book about, like, acquiring skill. I could give you a list, but
maybe that'll be another podcast. That'll be another discussion. We'll just talk about all the books that actors, singer, dancers should read.
Yeah, because I mean, there's some just for the like a living in this industry and just how to live in general mindset. But yeah, I think there's a couple that have contributed to just the overall like approach and how to, like, what to expect and what to just how to live healthily with not knowing, just living gig to gig and focusing on the right things and putting value in the right places, so that it's not as dramatic for yourself with the highs and lows, but it's like at the end of the day, I think it's if you book a job, great, keep working. If you don't book a job, great, keep working. If you're in the middle of things, great, keep working. It's just like you can't escape the journey of it, and it's, at the end of the day, it's the person who loves walking will walk further than the person who wants to get to the destination. And so it's if you love it's cliche, but if you love the journey of doing the craft and just always getting better, and that's the most important thing, is like, how much more can I find or express myself or be good in this thing, or like, if that's the goal, then everything else will happen as a byproduct, rather than just trying to do exactly what you need to for something. Because then there's also like a sense of desperation in when you're auditioning for something and it's just to get that one thing. But if it's, oh, I just enjoy doing this, and I'm gonna come into the room and enjoy auditioning for you because it's playtime, and I get to show you what I worked on, and I enjoy doing that. That's the best, healthiest place to be.
I love that. I drive that home every day. You have to be passionate about the process.
Because that's what people will respond to, is how much joy and playfulness you have in the audition room, or that you have on stage. And if they see that you're really in it, or you're really enjoying yourself, or that's what's exciting. That's what's like transcendent about performing arts, and whether you're on stage or in film, it's like you get to embody someone else and feel that empathy for people in different situations. And I think it's a lot of it is, if I were to boil it down, it's take your ego out of it, and it's let the journey and the milestones happen around you, but don't let that be, like, let it motivate you, but don't let it be the things that you need to validate yourself. Like, try as much as you can to just focus on the craft, and getting better for the sake of just being better, and being as flexible, be as good as many things as you can that are interesting to you, for the sake of it being fun.
I love it. This has been great.
Yeah.
I'm really so happy that we were able to make this work today. Thank you so much.
There's some things in there. And in terms of the books, I can get stuff together, because I pulled some out, but like there's too many to kind of talk about. Like, these are the ones that I've read recently. Intent to Live is really good overall acting book. Talent Code, talked about that for a second. Free Play is really good for anyone, anything improvisation. Actors, I would suggest it too, but anyone like just who's doing their own things creatively, songwriters, anyone, musicians, things like that, it's really good. Audition's good for general audition technique. Man and His Symbols is really great for, it's Carl Jung, but it's like dream interpretation, but it's just good for like archetypes and things with character and just humanity type things. Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind for mindset. This is just a good overall quick acting book. There's others too, but
that's great. I love it. I have to share too that Anthony Abeson is going to be a guest on the podcast soon, next week.
Wait, hold on.
He's got his book. His book is great too. You have it? Oh, hold it up.
It's in my bag, because I just finished Meisner's book. So I literally just yesterday finished this one.
Oh, I love that one.
And the next one on my list, Anthony Abeson.
There it is, Anthony Abeson.
So that's going to be today on the subway. I'm starting this one.
Love it.
Yeah, I'm hoping to, once I get through a couple more, I want to kind of condense it all because I'm highlighting and dog earing different pages and things. But I'd love to like condense it down to like the nuggets that I think are most important, and where things kind of line up, and where the common denominators are for everything in terms of just like acting and different mindset things, but maybe that'll be forthcoming.
There you go. I love that. I love that. Thank you, Kurt. Love you.
Yeah, love it too. Thanks for having me.
If you'd like to connect with Kurt and continue to follow his professional journey, follow him on Instagram at Kurt Csolak or at solarcproductions, and join me Sundays at 8 p.m. Eastern. Need more information? Visit lbctalent.com and follow me on socials at LisaSolak_LBC By sharing our stories, we can help other talented individuals land the career of their dreams. If you're enjoying this podcast, please like and subscribe below.